were you, I shouldn't get too used to being back. In fact, I mightn't bother unpacking at all.
Welcome back to our epic Harry Potter feast. This is part 3 of our 4 parts. How are you feeling about this one, Mary?
I was a bit hesitant coming in because I've never really liked 6 very much, and was 5 going to hold up? But I do think it's actually completely the other way around this time at Switch, which we will discuss when we get into the movies themselves. But I do feel like it's really up the ante now. The films were getting better. The acting was so much better for the kids. It did start to kind of lift in quality, and obviously the stakes are higher.
Moving towards the end. But that also means we're getting very close to finishing our series. So just in case anyone's not listened to part 1 and part 2 yet, highly recommend that. Part 1, we looked at the process of adapting the books to the screen and our favourite deleted scenes, and last time, episode 2, we looked at the evolution of the franchise and our favourite music. We've learnt a lot along the way, especially about ourselves. So Mary really likes graveyards, and I think potions are a bit too witchy. And in this episode, we're going to be focusing on the casting, and we're also going to be picking our top 10 favourite characters at the end. So, yeah. So if we start by just rewinding, let's go back 20 years plus.
Of the actors, I can only say I could never have dreamt the talent we'd have in these films.
They've decided to make Harry Potter into a film, and they've got to look for the primary cast of children. Also
knowing that there's going to be more books.
Yes,
that
lots to come.
If it is successful, they will be doing all of the books. You are hiring a kid for
life.
a decade, you really are putting everything on the line, picking that one kid.
Yeah, the choices had to be perfect, didn't they?
Yeah.
And J.K. Rowling was very, I don't want to say she was very specific about what she wanted, but I think she knew in her head, obviously, who the characters were. One of the things she wanted was a purely British cast as well.
Yeah.
Not that it limited that, but that was another criteria.
But it makes Harry Potter what it is. I think it was really great having David Heyman as the producer, because he loved the characters and he loved the books, and he was very true to them, especially in the casting. He wanted the films to be the books, and that really makes a difference. Yeah,
we were talking as well as the previous episodes about how faithful they were trying to be throughout, and the books were always the basis of every decision that they made. Ron and Hermione seemed like a relatively straightforward casting process. There didn't seem to be any hitches with that, but they really struggled to find Harry, and they were 2 weeks away from filming, I think, and they still didn't have the title character cast.
That's rather drastic if you're getting 2 weeks before filming.
A bit close, isn't it? But there's so many different stories about how Daniel Radcliffe was actually cast. So much so that it almost seemed like it was destined to happen some way or another, because there were so many blockages, and his parents originally said no, and coincidences as well, like the producers would bump into him and his parents at the theatre and things like that. It does seem like the universe was trying to make Daniel Radcliffe Harry Potter, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think he's immensely well cast. I mean, but you can't picture Harry Potter any other way now.
Yeah.
I think he had exactly what they said. It was what drew them to him. He has a look in his eyes. There's something deeper, wiser than a 10-year-old kid, And that was what was needed, because at the end of the day, Harry is in a way an old soul.
Yeah.
Not all kids have that, but Dan did. So, you know.
It's a funny thing you just said about the image of the characters you have in your head. And I don't know if, you read a lot more than me, but I don't know whether you, going back to the books at any point, saw the actors in the characters.
Oh God, yeah, absolutely. Now I do, yeah. But I don't remember ever thinking at the time, well, he just doesn't look the part at all. I don't remember thinking it didn't fit. I didn't have any problem with the casting at all, which goes to show how great it's been, I suppose.
Yeah, and that's definitely what they did, wasn't it? They were never looking for actors. They were always looking for people who embodied the characters already, and they did a lot of public open casting calls for the younger characters. So a couple more examples were Fred and George, who skipped school famously to go and to go and audition, and Ivana Lynch, who played Luna Lovegood.
Yeah,
who was
15,000 people queued to try and get that part.
And she got the role because she
was Luna.
I think she believed that she was her.
Yeah.
And that happened. And then another one, Jessie Cave, who played Lavender Brown, who was just brought in for a screen test with Rupert Grint and
nailed it.
Stole the show. Yeah. Yeah, it's fascinating that they found so many people just from auditioning The Nation.
Yeah.
But J.K. Rowling said this at the premiere of the Deathly Hallows Part 2, and she calls the young cast the Big Seven. She thought they were perfect, and exactly what she thought. I don't know what she saw in Ginny, but we'll get onto that. But Harry, Ron, Hermione, Ginny, Neville, Luna, and Draco, she said that they were exactly as she pictured, so they definitely did a good job in finding these characters.
It's not easy either, I don't think, especially when you're adapting from books because of the fans, because of the author, because it's all pictured in people's heads. And it can make or break a movie, the casting.
That ties into another ethos they had behind the franchise, and that was to make it real. There's a lot of magic and a lot of stuff that doesn't exist. I think in a way it was important that they did find people who fit those roles, because we had to believe them, and then almost by consequence the characters were, I'm not saying they're better in the films, but they were enhanced in a certain way. Like another dimension was added because there was a real layer added in. It wasn't just someone doing a imitation of a description on page. It was someone actually living it over a long period of time.
I think as well, something you've got to think about as well is obviously most of the kids were all returning every year, but you had new people every year. You had Kenneth Branagh in the second one, and then obviously in the fifth one you've got Imelda Staunton coming in for Umbridge. And so people are coming in and out all the time, but the characters are all developed. They're so well developed. They need to be able to just jump in and live that character. Because the secondary characters, there's so many of them. There's so many of them all the way through. And the thing is, they knew the importance of that, and they were getting legendary actors, fantastic actors to come in and do these parts.
Yeah, most of which, interestingly, were like hand-picked. They were always seemed to be the first choice of the directors. I remember Chris Columbus was saying that it was the first time ever he'd got all of his first choices, and that included Richard Harris and Maggie Smith and Robbie Coltrane, who J.K. Rowling apparently wrote. She wrote it with him in mind. Obviously, she didn't think it was going to be films, but yeah, it's just fascinating.
It just goes to show how important the casting process is. It's one of the most successful elements of the movies.
I saw in one of the documentaries, and I've never seen him do an interview for Harry Potter. It was very brief. It was just one clip, and it was John Cleese, and he was in character as Nearly Headless Nick, and I thought, I've never seen this before. And one thing he said, he says, when you see total quality, you want to be part of it. And I always think about how many actors said that they wished they'd been asked to be in it.
It was a casting call of like the greatest British actors. Maggie Smith and Robbie Coltrane and Richard Harris and Imelda Staunton and Alan Rickman and Kenneth Branagh. You just go through, you're just like, oh my God, like, who hasn't been in this movie?
I've written a list of the cameos and supporting characters. I mean, John Hurt, Bill Nye comes in, Julie Christie, Pam Ferris, Zoe Wanamaker. You've said Kenneth Branagh, Miriam Margolyes, Emma Thompson, Dawn French, Julie Walters, Emma Thompson,
you
Roger
can
Lloyd
pick
Pack.
out like a handful of names, can't you, that aren't in it? And then you go, oh, why weren't they in it? It's like you've got like Judi Dench and Helen Mirren. You're like,
that would have been good.
Oh, why weren't they in it?
Yeah.
Like they must have felt really left out.
It's just fantastic. I mean, there's not much to say about the adult cast other than just gushing over who's in it and how good
I think now that's probably where we can jump on to the evolution of the characters and how they grew over the parts. Now, having those amazing actors in there was key to the kids, because it was like being at an acting school.
Yeah.
They had these great actors to watch.
Yeah.
You literally see them grow on screen, not just as people, and they get bigger and older and more mature each film, but you also see their progression in their job, in their career.
My favourite example of that is Daniel Radcliffe with Gary Oldman.
Yeah, because he idolised Gary Oldman, didn't he? He just absolutely idolised him.
And vice versa, I think, weirdly, where they saw something in each other. I like that. There's something I thought, even from the very beginning, decisions that the characters were empowered to make about the characters that they were playing, to make them, to give them that extra dimension. And a lot of that is something like what they wear. I know McGonagall had the idea to put the feather in her hat.
Yeah.
And Helena Bonham Carter had the, the decisions to make her look like a dishevelled former glam witch, and Trelawney's costume, and all
I think
sorts of
that's
things like
key, isn't it? It's key to the acting profession, that they implement their own little touch to things.
Yeah, you've got to literally get inside the shoes of someone else.
Yeah, and especially with the kids, I think as well, they mentioned that as they got more confident, they felt able to make decisions about the characters. Well, they wouldn't say this or they wouldn't do this, or, and again, with the clothing, like when they came to the third film, he was very much, well, how would you wear this if you were at school? How would you wear your uniform? What would you do with it? Things like that. And you don't think about it as a separate element. You just see the film, but then when you actually break it down, it really makes a difference.
There's a couple of examples of actors who came in to play parts that weren't necessarily human. So I know Robbie Coltrane said, well, not many people have played a giant, and just him describing how would Hagrid move, for fear of knocking things over and stuff like that. I mean, we're basically just describing what acting is, but it's fascinating to look at the specifics. And I like how they were allowed to improvise as well at times. So there's times where you see the three mains kind of break character in a way, but they've kept it in because it's them existing as real people.
Yeah. And that's part of the evolution of them growing over time, because that they had that complete experience of Harry Potter together. The three leads that come in unknown, new to acting, and grew together. Yeah. So they had a very strong bond going through it, and that shows through because they were experiencing it, kind of like the kids were in the books. Starting a new school, that's what they were doing.
And it's such a unique experience in terms of cinema. There's really not been anything like it since. There's still been nothing that goes that
and
way.
It made such an important decision in terms of filming, because they had to do it almost back to back, because if they wanted to follow the kids, they didn't have the time, the luxury, because the kids were growing so quick. I mean, the difference between them between the first and the second, and then the second and the third, they were at that crucial stage. I think when you go from like 10 to 14, you change an awful lot in that time, which you don't get with other films, really. It's not as key or as important that you can go away and take a break and then come back and do it. They didn't have that luxury with these.
Yeah, I've noted down about Alfonso Cuarón asking them to write the essay. Sorry, I've just jumped back a little bit. Asking them to write an essay from the first person perspective. And Hermione wrote 30 pages. Harry wrote one side of A4 and Ron didn't
hand it in. Yeah. Ron wouldn't hand in the essay.
It was just perfect, yeah. Oh, perfect. Just before we jump into Order of the Phoenix, then, we should touch on where casting not where it wasn't so great, but where there were hitches along the way. So obviously Richard Harris passed away after the second film.
Yeah, that was the big one.
Which we touched on the other episode, which meant that they had to recast. But recast is a weird word, because I don't think Michael Gambon wanted to be acknowledged as someone who had been recast.
Watching the documentary was quite nice, actually, that part of it, learning the behind the scenes, because for a long time they just said no, we're not even talking about that now. We're not going into it, and they left it for a period that was very respectful, and then came to it afterwards. And I thought it was really funny that Daniel Radcliffe said that when Michael Gambon came in, he was pretending that he didn't know he was replacing someone. So was like, am I?
Absolutely.
I thought, but that was really good, because it was nice to see that part of it, and the respectfulness that was involved in it, and the little flourishes, like the Irish accent that Michael Gambon did as a nod to Richard Harris, and it made me feel better about the character, about
just a little bit
being recast. Yeah, just a little bit. I love what Michael Gambon for himself, but I just find it so hard when you put them together. Yeah,
because I was like watching two different characters.
Yeah, I was so invested in Richard Harris's performance. I was gutted. They had to recast.
Yeah.
How they did it, I think, was the best way they could have done it. Very respectful, waited a period of time.
And then pretended that he never existed.
Yeah. Well, in a nice, funny way.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think they definitely did the right thing and did it the right way.
Yeah. Yeah, they handled it well. The only other one was Warwick Davis suddenly changing appearance as Professor Flitwick.
I don't
Very
understand.
unusual.
Nobody's ever talked about it, as far as I know.
He was
They
credited
just changed
as
him. Nobody's ever
Wizard
said.
in Prisoner of Azkaban because they thought, oh, we'll just bring him in to conduct a choir, and then they're like, oh, we quite like the look, so we'll keep it. Stupid decision. Anyway, enough of that. So let's let's jump into the Order of the Phoenix.
Why? Because you know who's back, you tosspot.
It's the biggest book.
Yes.
There's an awful lot to get through. There's a lot of character development in this one. Lots of changes. It started in the fourth one with Goblet of Fire as the kids were growing. You were starting to see that, like, you know, teenagers and different relationships developing, things like that. And you get more of that in this one. But there's always great things with Harry Potter. There's bits that work and bits that I don't like so much. Like, I think the flying through London, great. Looks fantastic, but why are they flying in full view? Like going past a boat.
What are they playing at?
I was like, what, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think overall, for me, I didn't enjoy it as much as I remember. I'm not entirely sure why. I've not been able to figure it out why I didn't enjoy it as much.
I'm the opposite. I think I enjoyed it more than I remember, but not for the reasons I was expecting. I think mine was on the side of development, and I think Harry in this one is particularly interesting character, and actually Daniel Radcliffe's best performance, I think, in the series. He
has that pent up anger that he can't explain. He doesn't know why. But I find the first half it gets better. I think the beginning, it's almost like it's not that it's not done well. It's when he starts to explain himself, when he explains his worries. I think maybe my favourite moment is in the Black Family Tree Room when he actually does express his worries.
Yeah.
You know,
that's one of my
I'm
scenes.
angry all the time. Am I a bad person? You know, I think that's a great scene. Absolutely
but we're jumping
fantastic.
ahead.
We're jumping ahead.
Let's go right to the beginning. So Harry obviously has just come back. He's just come back from the graveyard.
He's had a major haircut.
Yeah, vast improvement. In fact, I'd say this is maybe the best film for haircuts. But yeah. So this one, and the word is isolated. I think he's very isolated in this film.
Purposefully, but doesn't know why.
Nobody saw what happened in the graveyard apart from him. He's obviously grieving. I get a sense of PTSD in this film from Harry, and his mental health, I think, is something that maybe isn't talked about, but it's very obviously being portrayed.
An issue. Yeah.
But yeah, it doesn't really delve into that so much, as you said, it until later on. But what we do get is a random attack of Dementors in Surrey. Not hugely important, so we'll jump ahead. But he does do magic outside of school, which I know.
Yeah, and this time he gets expelled because that's what's supposed to happen.
I thought you'd be thrilled. Yeah.
Yes.
In fact, I'm surprised I didn't see you on the jury in the Ministry, just in the background with your hand up, going guilty, guilty. Sent to Azkaban.
I think it gave Harry Melling a bit more to do.
Yeah.
In this one.
Very different Dudley Dursley. You know, we've not seen him for 2 films. Well, we've skipped a film because they weren't in Goblet of Fire, were they?
No, they weren't.
I kind of like what he did. But then Dudley was always a bit of a panto character in a way, wasn't he? He was never a serious character.
But he had developed. You could see he developed as an actor.
So yeah, he ends up at the Ministry. We'll talk about the Ministry as well later on because there's a much bigger sequence. But he ends up at an inquiry in front of a very large crowd of Ministry members, having to defend his actions, not just because of the Dementors, but because of what happened at the graveyard, and nobody believes him.
It's interesting to look at this one because the character of Cornelius Fudge, the Minister of Magic, he kind of embodies like the everyman and what they think about the situation. Yeah. He's in denial. He's completely switched his opinion of Harry. He's completely against him.
But part of him, believes it. He's terrified just talking about it out loud.
Yeah, terrified.
There's something about the politics in this one, the whole corruption of the Ministry, which becomes a lot bigger later on and isn't necessarily spoon-fed to us in terms of answers in this one. But I really like how you get the sense that something behind the scenes at the Ministry is causing this change, and there's some influence from Voldemort and the Death Eaters creeping in. These attempts to silence Harry and Dumbledore, who's the only person who's really sticking up for him I suppose on a similar note, the way this film brings in the wider world through the newspapers. Notice these montages that they suddenly had.
Much bigger media element.
Yeah.
But that started in Goblet of Fire, I think, with like Rita Skeeter and things like that. And they've developed it so much more in this one to it's like paparazzi, isn't it?
Yeah, and suddenly the Daily Prophet went from being this, just universal wizarding newspaper, which was very helpful, to being something that is dangerous, and is a weapon against people. And all of a sudden it matters what people think about Harry, or at least it matters to Harry because of the stakes.
A big moment is like him against Seamus.
Yeah.
That because that's like they've gone through school together, grew up together, and all of a sudden he's turned on him. You know?
And again, it adds to that part of Harry's character in this one of isolation. He's completely alienated, I think, and sort of in a way sort of scapegoated, I guess. I mean, I don't know what people were suggesting did happen at the graveyard.
Yeah, I like the bit where he says in the Defence Against the Dark Arts lesson that Cedric Diggory just dropped dead of his own accord, did he?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no one's really offering any other scenarios or solutions.
It is interesting what it does, definitely, because our media is like that. Our media is that if we don't know something completely and don't have the details, you just go off what you hear. Yeah,
and it's very powerful, publishing
immensely.
Something, because you do take it as the truth a lot of the time, although we shouldn't. I know we're still just on the beginning, but I think that is something that I really, really liked about this one.
Yeah.
I love that extra layer.
You mentioned it opening up to the wider world, and I think the Ministry set was absolutely incredibly done. It's huge.
It's the biggest set they made, I think. Yeah. You could fit 55 double-decker buses in it, apparently.
You see like the flu network being used, the fireplaces, everybody coming in. Again, it's like you're seeing how the adults live
and how the world operates.
We're used to seeing this tiny little world of like this section, which is Hogwarts. You just see this school, this tiny little part, and then you see this huge scale. Like, this is the world of magic.
Yeah, you forget it's not just a castle or a few little towns around the castle. It's not even just the country, it's the earth.
Yeah, you're getting a tiny snippet of what the world is really at Hogwarts.
Yeah.
And this really branches out, and I think that's a fantastic set. And obviously there's loads of extras and loads going on, and it really builds the scale of things.
Yeah.
I thought that was very well done.
Another expansion, not in terms of geography, but in terms of history, is the Order of the Phoenix and what that is. And I think this is the first time you really get some information about the First Wizarding War.
Yeah, what it was like then, who was there.
Pretty much, yeah. You get the photograph of the old Order of the Phoenix. I really like that bit.
Yeah.
I always pause it there and have a look around and just see who you can see. It's like, this is James, and Peter Pettigrew. And like you said, there's loads of mentions of last time and that history's repeating itself this time. And this is the first film we get a sense of a new war developing.
Yeah.
But it's now all on the younger generation. Sirius says, you're the young ones now. And I like that.
Yeah. I feel those scenes really work so well. I feel maybe part of what I find hard is the lighter elements don't mix. I don't mesh well with those parts. There's a lot of like lighter moments and you're getting the whole school part and things like that. And it just doesn't mesh with this other story of this bigger story of the outside world and what's going on there. And maybe that's where I kind of don't connect.
I actually wrote, the film does a good job at distracting us for a bit of time so that the later stuff has a bigger impact later on. But yeah, I think it's the last time really the series should have had lighter elements. We'll get into number 6. But I think, this should have been the last time they had a glimpse of fun at school before moving on. Because we had to get characters like Luna and Ginny and even Neville more into the mix. I think they needed that.
Yeah.
And the fun of still discovering stuff. But the reason they're having to do that in the first place is because somebody's come to the school to teach from the Ministry, who we know now is not as good as we might have thought beforehand.
Melda Staunton.
Melda Staunton's turned up. And I have to say, potentially in the top 3 best acted roles, I think, in the
Absolutely
series.
stole the show.
She's not necessarily likable, but yeah, Imelda Staunton was just, fantastic.
And to come in, like you say, like we're 5 films in,
Yeah.
and she just literally comes in like a tornado and is fantastic.
Yeah. And to come in as a villain as well, not everybody's going to be enjoying your performance because naturally you kind of hate her.
Yeah.
But she nailed everything, that condescending, patronising.
She's fabulous
killjoy.
to hate. You love to hate her. And that's the best type of character, I think. When you love to hate them, you've done a good job.
I genuinely think, like more so than Voldemort, that she's the most evil character.
That was what I was just going to say. This one is really much darker. There's like a serious undertone about race, etc., relating to Umbridge. And she's got a problem with half-breeds and anybody that's not pure. So in a way, she's got that Voldemort thing going on because he's all about pure bloods.
The same ideology, yeah.
It's just ever so slightly different for her.
It's just that she enjoys torturing children.
I know that's not good.
It's so weird.
Really hate children. Yeah, it shows. It shows love. It shows.
Just wrote, she's a sick bitch. Like if Hitler worked for Ofsted, is what just thought I'd just put that in there. It's the little. She's interesting because every now and again you see her just slip ever so slightly that she
loses that face.
She's almost taken aback by what even she's doing. Or you see her get angry and it's the smile coming back and she is almost mad. She's
got this mask.
Yeah,
and the mask slips occasionally.
And she hides behind the costume as well, doesn't she? The costume and the office and the cats. And
does
all
she
the
not
stuff
have anything else
her.
to wear?
I mean,
it's very,
I'd love to get more of a backstory on her. Why is she like that? I like it when she perfumes Hagrid's door.
I would love to have seen more of her.
Just want to understand her better. I know we've seen Voldemort already briefly in number 4, but I think dressing evil up as Dolores Umbridge was very clever because I think it eased us into the darkness that was gradually being drip fed in.
Yeah, as well, it's interesting because you're seeing she has to have total power, total control, and you're seeing Dumbledore in a very different light as well because he is handicapped really by that. There's not really he doesn't do much, he doesn't do anything, he doesn't fight. Just all of these things are happening, and obviously that's where the Dumbledore's army comes into it. And I quite enjoyed that. It was always a part of the book I really enjoyed as well, seeing them learning the magic. I hate Harry as a teacher. I think it's such a patronising way of speaking to people. Really didn't like that.
I think he did it all right. I think because he's quite an awkward character. I think he kind of did it.
Oh God, it was so awkward.
Tell you what I really do like is when they meet for the first time in the Hog's Head to to sign people up. That was a moment that I really I don't know why, it really sort of hit me. And it's the moment where people suddenly start recognising Harry's achievements in a way that they haven't done before. And it sort of casts your mind back into different scenes from earlier films. And Ron's like, he killed a basilisk in the Chamber of Secrets once. And did you know he can do Patronus?
In terms of what wizards can do, that's kind of pretty up there.
Yeah. I think it was just nice that Harry was popular for the first time, really, and everyone was saying, I didn't know you could do all this stuff. I want to do that. And I think it was quite a relief, especially seeing as he was having such a hard time up until this point. Obviously, it changes again, which is why I like the tone of this one, that it goes dark, light, then back to dark. So I really like that meeting.
Yeah, I think as well, this one, as you were saying before, we introduced Luna. Fantastic character. She
really
every moment she has on screen she nails it.
Yeah.
Again, she's another great character. She came in late on and just nailed what she needed to do.
Yeah.
And not only that, but you develop characters like you say, like Neville and Ginny. You didn't seem to like Ginny from what you said earlier.
I hate you more in the next film.
Yes, I do. I have to admit, in this one, she's not bad. The only problem I have with Ginny is she's kind of emotionless. She's got no facial expressions whatsoever.
She's got the charisma of a pencil.
It's just nothing going on with her face.
Which means she has no chemistry with anyone else. Yeah.
But I like what they did with the character in this one, like putting her up against her brothers and things like that. You know, that was good.
Yeah,
that
all of
worked
those
well.
training montages were really fun. Even Ron versus Hermione. And,
Yeah, I'll go
things
easy
like
on
that.
you.
Yeah, okay. Thanks, Ron. Yeah, just speaking on Luna, her connection with Harry is really interesting as well. Why they made good friends, especially in this film, and that's because they kind of understood each other, or they both experienced loss. They were both not particularly popular. They were outsiders.
But she doesn't kind of see Harry as a friend. There was something she said, I think it's in the next one, where she says kind of like a friend, and he goes, "I am your friend, Luna." You know.
Yeah.
Like she has a weird relationship with other people because she's treated very differently.
Yeah. She sees past a lot of the superficial stuff and she looks a lot deeper.
Yeah, sees another perspective on things.
Yeah. And then you mentioned Neville as well, and this is where Bellatrix Lestrange is factored into the mix, and what happened to Neville's parents, which a lot of people say they'd like to have seen a lot more.
Yeah, he's very short-changed, I think, throughout the series.
Yeah.
He gets little moments, but he is quite short-changed as a character who just turns up places. Like, oh, there's Neville. He is here.
I think he has enough references in this to give him something to go off. You know, it's not much. But like when he stood at the mirror talking about Bellatrix after she's escaped, and then later on little digs that Bellatrix makes to him, how's mum and dad, things like that. Worth mentioning because we've not really talked about him yet.
Skipping on to that then, so it's kind of a film of two parts. The first part is much bigger than the second, but you've got everything leading up to going to the ministry, school and all of that, and then it cuts and you're at the ministry and it's this whole of the ball game.
And up until this point, Harry's not had any help like he usually does.
Yeah.
Dumbledore, especially, being a dick again.
Yeah, ignoring him.
Yeah. But he's just so horrible in this one. Like, Dumbledore told us not to tell you anything, with no proper justification of why he's leading him.
You very much feel, why is this? What the hell's going on? Why? And it's not until the end that he explains it. You're like, well, that makes sense, I suppose.
The only explanation he said was, you would be more protected if I didn't talk to you. That
could have told him that, you know.
Yeah. I take issue with Dumbledore from here pretty much all the way to the end now. And up until now, I think he's been... I mean, all the characters are flawed. That's what makes them real. But Dumbledore, he's such a contradiction.
I think his flaw is Harry, though. Harry is his flaw because he cares. He doesn't make the right decisions when it comes to Harry.
But all the time. Any decision, teachers, Harry, Voldemort, Triwizard Tournament, he just never seems to make a single right decision. So I personally really struggle with the character of Dumbledore because it just doesn't make sense to me. I just think it's important that Dumbledore, because he's about to come back,
is held accountable.
Yeah, Dumbledore.
This one as well, I think, this is the moment I really missed Richard Harris.
Okay.
Because the moment he fights Voldemort at the ministry, that would have been immense with Richard Harris.
I tried to picture it with him in it. Since you talked about it in the other episode, I thought, you know what, I'll try and put Richard Harris on it. And I guess, I mean, what I said before was that I couldn't imagine Richard Harris like throwing his arms around and doing all that stuff. But it is quite contained, I think, in terms of Dumbledore. So I think he could have done it, and it would have made this old man suddenly have a lot of power. Yeah,
it would have been much more effective, I think, with Richard Harris because he played the part so quiet and contained and
I said it's like Yoda, isn't it, when he drops the cane and then starts flipping all around.
Yeah, exactly. That's what it would have been like, whereas Michael Gambon's more flamboyant as a character anyway. The thing with Dumbledore is you expect great things but you don't necessarily see it, and that's in the books and the way Richard Harris plays it. I think that's very much how people consider him. Like, Dumbledore is dead old and wise, but you can't imagine him doing any of these things because he's an old man.
Until he does.
Yeah.
I like the scene where Harry yells at him, finally. And he says, "Look at me!" I really like that.
Very
and then he sends
done.
him down to the dungeons immediately to have these lessons with Snape. Sorry, I know we were at the Ministry. I just realised that the reason they got to the Ministry is because Harry's having these visions. But we get more to Snape here as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't really like the flashback scenes, really. I don't really like them very much. I don't like the way they were done. Another thing that adds to Harry's identity crisis is that he learns that James was a bit of a bully.
He was a dick.
Yeah.
At school, he was a prat,
so
like
interesting.
most boys at school. But he idolises his dad because he doesn't know him.
Yeah, and it throws into question all over again, who am I and where have I come from? All the stuff that Lupin helped him understand in number 3 was sort of thrown into doubt again.
Yeah, and obviously he's not very good at occlumency.
No, he's not.
Never really masters that at all, one iota, and that's what leads them to the Ministry. It's nice that he has these people with him. Obviously, Ron and Hermione would follow him, anywhere. But the fact that the others are there as well is nice.
They realise there's a reason they were doing it in the first place, and this is the time.
It's a real team, and they're just like, well, we're going, aren't we? Let's go. What do you think about the Ministry, the fighting against the Death Eaters when they come into it? It's very dark. It's adults attacking children. But
we know they're not afraid to kill kids now. I think you get that feeling.
But you don't get that very often in movies.
No.
Like, it's very realistic, and they're very traumatic films when you watch children being killed by adults. That's not a normal situation, and it's very dark that because they're willing to go there. They'll kill these kids.
I think initially when they're in the prophecy room, there's a lot of just throwing spells and blocking spells. There's not a lot of. I don't think the stakes felt high there, although I understood that they were trying. They wouldn't have hesitated to randomly kill off 15-year-olds. But when they get into the next room, the room with the veil thing, which I have a lot of questions. I still don't quite understand why that's important. But the fighting there when they ordered the Phoenix come in and all the wand craft.
I love that moment when they come in the white light.
Yeah, it's funny that, isn't it? They come in white
music and they just appear in these like really great stances. I'm just like,
I like
wow.
the get away from my godson. Punch in. That was improvised apparently. That was,
you see that
said,
in
I just want to do it.
Documentary. Yeah.
I
really want to try that. Just punch him,
Just punch him. Quite a few times that, punches has been factored into the films.
I found it really shocking when the Death Eater punches Luna in the face. That I found quite shocking.
I forgot about that.
That's a shocking moment, I think. An adult punching a child. I just can't go with that. It really has an effect on me, that.
Yeah.
So let's wrap it up for Order of the Phoenix. So how do you feel about it overall? So we have the big fight with Dumbledore and Voldemort, and they finally reveal, yes, he's back.
Yeah.
How do you feel?
Yes, he's back. Like I said, I enjoyed this a lot more overall, and I can count on a couple of fingers the things I didn't like. And I'll mention them now. I didn't like, although it's in the book, I don't like the whole grope part.
No.
I feel like it kind of
work.
Didn't need to be there. It didn't even matter for the end. It played no part in Umbridge being taken away, really, other than the fact that they took her there and hoped that Grope would do it because it was the Centaurs that took her away. So I didn't really like that, but it was short enough that it didn't bother me.
I didn't think the effects worked with it. The face looked weird.
No, it was a proper motion capture thing as well.
Yeah, didn't work.
The only good thing I did get out of it that I thought was good is a little look between Harry and Hagrid that I didn't notice before. You will look after him, won't you? He's the only family I've got. And I think there's a little look where Harry understands it. I think that's kind of nice, but it's misplaced. It should have happened films ago, if that was going to happen. But so I didn't like that. The only other thing I didn't like was right at the end where Harry gets possessed by Voldemort. And it's not so much the event, it's just how they did it. Voldemort's just doing this weird dance against a green screen. I just didn't really like that bit. In fact, no, the actual ending as well, when they're leaving Hogwarts and he says, we've got something that Voldemort doesn't have, something worth fighting for, and it ends. I just thought it was a bit cheesy. But other than that, everything else I thought was actually really, really, really good.
What about your favourite moment? What would you say your favourite moment was from this one?
Right, oh God. Yeah, I've got to go with it. The favourite moment is Harry and Sirius in Grimmauld Place.
My God, we never agree. We never agree on anything. That is my favourite moment as well. Though I do like it when the Order show up as well.
Oh, that is good too.
But definitely I think the Black Family Tree scene is fabulous. God, we never agree. That's so weird. It's more serious, pardon the pun.
It's more serious.
It is. It's just a more serious scene and it really works, I think. The
line that really works for me is, you're a very good person who bad things have happened to.
Yeah.
And a bit like in Prisoner of Azkaban when some of Dumbledore's speeches really encompass the film. That one for me, I think, does it for the whole series. I think it's a great arc for Harry.
You're not a bad person. You're a very good person who bad things have happened to.
Speaking of lines, what's your favourite quote from this one? Usually I have loads of examples for this, and I literally have only written down one, which I think goes to show.
A few. I've written two that I'd never heard before. One was where Hermione says, giants, you found them. He said, well, they're not hard to find, to be honest. They're so big, you see. And then another one where she says to Ron, that was clever, Ron. And Ron says, it's been known to happen. I don't know. Yeah, not too many ones in this. I've gone just after Harry kisses Cho, he comes back and they say, how was it? And he goes, when? She was sort of crying. And then Ron says, you're that bad at it, are you?
My favourite's very similar. It's in the same scene. And it's Hermione saying, just because you've got the emotional range of a teaspoon.
I nearly wrote it.
I just love that line. Yeah. That's a brilliant line. That was great.
And then favourite character for this one? It's hard, this one, because some are better acted, but they're not necessarily
it's favourites. A toss-up, this one, between Umbridge and Luna Lovegood. I think they both came in and did fantastic things, and they both stand out in terms of what they did. It's very hard. I think it would be a tie for me, for both of them.
No, you've got to pick, because it ruins the Twitter stuff.
In terms of... Right, if I have to pick, then Luna, because she's the good guy. I don't like baddies.
I mean, I was torn between Umbridge and Sirius. And I think, again, to say that Umbridge is my favourite is kind of not right. But I think Sirius would have been my favourite in Prisoner of Azkaban if we had more time with him. So because we get more time now, I'm going to say Sirius for this one.
I can see that. Yeah.
So next, number 6. Now we're really getting close to the end. This is Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince.
Don't you understand? I have to do this.
Okay, background for this one. So I have never really remembered this one. I always find it really
75% is forgettable as soon as you finish it.
Yeah. Like, before I watch it, I'll think, oh, yeah, I didn't like that one. Half-Blood Prince, probably the bottom of my list. Every time I've rewatched it, though, I think, that's much better than I remember it. Why do I feel that bad about it?
What it is the film's not bad. The film's good, it's well made, it's entertaining. It just doesn't contribute a lot to the overall story. So it does feel a little bit inconsequential in the grand scheme of things, but it is enjoyable.
I would say with this one, there's a lot of great scenes.
Yeah.
Where you take them as their own thing. There's lots of great scenes in it, but then when you put it all together, it's...
Like they were putting together all the last minute things they wanted to before they knew they would not have a chance again.
Yeah, I think, I like that scene. But then overall, it's just a bit... Love the London Death Eater opening. I think brilliant. The bridge collapse. Yeah,
one of the best scenes in the franchise. I thought that was
a fantastic opening.
It's the best opening, as well as the you get a little bit of a recap in this one. It's that choral music that I like.
The media
the pictures
afterwards.
At the Ministry. I think that's a really subtle recap of the events, but also the mindset.
But it also shows that bond with Dumbledore putting his arm around Harry there between them.
But you mentioned the Death Eater scene. I remember being in the cinema gripping the
pretty
arms.
Immense, isn't it? It's like, and it shows the impact on the Muggle world now. So this is not just contained. This is all out, huge threat. But then, so you've got this great opening, and then they go to like a tube cafe, and it's like the whole tosser remark. Like, what the hell's that? He's a bit of a tosser. I hate that. Why is it there? I just don't understand it.
They were just trying to suddenly introduce all the flirting stuff and the romance stuff. It just felt really distracting from the actual topic at hand. Yeah, you get that opening, and then for me, the rest of the film's pretty low key until the end.
And maybe that sums up the film for me. There's a great scene followed by something that just isn't needed or doesn't work. Then another great scene, and then it just goes along like that.
Yeah, and nothing really matters.
Like putting the room back together with Slughorn. That's a great scene. That's so effectively done. Nice. Really fantastic. That's great. But there's just great scenes that alone are really well done and entertaining. But then when you put it all together, I just don't know if it works.
When you're actually watching it, it's fun. It's fun and it's enjoyable. It was the only one I've looked at the time, because nothing was linking It did make you think, right, what's the next bit? What's the next bit?
Yeah, I
What's the
did
next bit?
look at the time towards the end. So this is going into what I was just going to say. There's a lot of teenage angst in this one, relationships and things. There's the Quidditch with Cormac and that kind of thing.
But also the big issues happen. Like there's a war happening, and then we're just watching people get girlfriends and boyfriends. It just doesn't sit in the right place for me. It felt like it should have been earlier.
Life's still going on for them, and it's a very confusing time. They're starting to think about relationships with other people and how they feel about like the Ron and Hermione. I love that in this. I really do love that. I think it's so well done, and I feel like Emma Watson has a lot more to do in this one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she does.
And developing her character, which I like. I really like that.
But do you think all of this sidelines the actual Horcrux stuff and the Voldemort stuff? Do you not think that's kind of an afterthought?
So I don't know, because I was looked at the time. So going after the Horcrux, that doesn't happen until just like the 2-hour mark. You've had a 2-hour movie. It was 1 hour 59 minutes when they went to that rock.
Yeah, it is
and
a
I was
very,
like, right, so
very
you've
long
got a whole
time.
film's worth of movie before you even get to that point.
The other thing, it's called the Half-Blood Prince, and none of that plot really happens, or at least it does, and it doesn't feel like it really matters.
Yeah, I did feel when Snape reveals it, I felt like it was such a brushed over moment, and it didn't feel big enough.
Yeah,
it didn't feel big enough.
Just how I felt about the whole thing. Nothing felt like it had any consequence or any real effect on the overall story.
I would disagree. I think the Dumbledore death. I think from the minute Draco gets in there, and I think that is Tom Felton's greatest moment in the entire franchise.
It's the only time he's had to do something.
I have to do this, otherwise he's going to kill me. I think he was brilliant in this film. He is a little boy who does not know how to get out of this adult situation he's in. He is just a kid.
He's basically facing loss of innocence, isn't it? Although he wasn't technically very innocent, but up until now, everything was kind of bullying, harmless stuff.
Yeah, he was this hard guy, always got his own way, had all this money, and then his family's in ruins, his father's imprisoned, he's been given this task to do, and he's just a kid. This is too much, and you see that. It's too much for a boy to deal with.
He kind of breaks down a little bit like Harry did in the last one. I think there's a slight parallel between the two of them, the pressure on them, different kinds of pressure.
I think he played it fantastically.
Yeah.
And I actually felt sorry for him. I think what he did with the character, he made you feel for him, even though you've hated him all this time. You feel sorry for him because at the end of the day, he's just a kid.
Yeah. If we go back then to Horace Slughorn.
Jim Broadbent, he's just great in everything he's ever been in.
I really like Jim Broadbent, but there's something about him, because he's got a very distinct look and a very distinct voice. He's one of those actors where there's always going to be so many aspects of himself in the character, because you can't really get away from him.
Well, he's always looked like an older gentleman, or he has all the time I've been growing up, he always seemed like an older gentleman. Yeah. So he always plays an older gentleman.
He's got quite a funny rubber face, hasn't he? So I think he was well cast in this. But in terms of his actual character, so here's some weird things. Initially I was thinking, well, I wonder why the Death Eaters are trying to recruit him. I thought that was odd, that he was running away from them, because he does seem a bit like a fool and yeah, okay, he knows potions.
But he is actually extremely clever with potions. He's very good at what he does. But they don't go into that, really.
No, he just said he was moving around. And then he said he was moving around sort of every week or so, but he was still sort of decorating every house that he was going to. So I thought that was a bit weird. But most weird, I think, is this idea of him collecting students. His favourites. And I just find it
quite dark, really, isn't it?
Not creepy, but just a little bit.
It is. No, it is a little bit creepy, weird. I think.
But then at the same time, let's say he's not one of your favourites. Look what happened with Ron. I mean, it is funny for a lot of it. He doesn't remember Ron's name. Good to see you, Wallenby. And things like that. Yeah. But then there's a bit where Ron is dying on his office floor and he just sits and watches. Yeah, he just doesn't do anything. He
didn't know what to do.
I think he's a really problematic character because he, like you say, he's very clever. He's a good teacher. He's a nice man. But there's something about him. He's a little bit broken. There were dark moments in him, and it did concern me a little bit. But Slughorn's a Slytherin. So,
yeah, he doesn't feel like one, though. He's the least Slytherin-like character I've ever come across.
it's the exclusivity of him having a club. I think that's what it is. He's so warm and open to everybody, but he's a little bit, and this is a really bad comparison, but he's a little bit like Umbridge in the sense that you like him, but you don't like him. Different balance of it, but yeah, another character you'd want to get a bit more backstory on and just understand why they are the way they are.
Yeah.
So yeah. You do get some good scenes in Potions, though, I think for the first time, actually. Bit comedy. I mean, the whole thing's a bit of a comedy film, isn't it? A comedy rom-com thing. But the brewing sequence is quite nice.
What do you think about Harry's Felix scene?
Oh, God. I always thought it was funny.
Weird.
And I remember us laughing in the cinema. And it is funny. But
he plays it like a drunk person.
I call it the weird walk potion because he just started... I don't get it. Yeah. You're meant to have luck, not suddenly be...
half drunk.
On drugs. There's some, that sequence, although I understand, he's going to go and get the stuff from Slughorn, but then he decides to go to Hagrid's instead because he has a good feeling, and I'm like, okay, I can just about buy that. And then he bumps into Slughorn, and I'm like, okay, I can just about buy that. And then... by
all means, come along, sir.
Yeah. Aragog's funeral is a bit weird here. Again, something like the Grope stuff, I really don't know why it had to be there other than getting them to Hagrid's. But he could have already have gone to Hagrid's. So the sequence as a whole, I think if you isolate it, it's quite funny and it has a purpose in the story, but it could have been done a little bit differently.
I think it works in the book, doesn't it? Because you've got information in between those parts. It's not just these isolated scenes like it is in the film. They had to pick scenes, not put every scene together like it is in the book.
It is a bit bitty.
I do think, let's jump ahead, once we get to searching for the Horcrux, and we're out in the real world.
In the field.
Yes,
on a mission.
In the field, yes, absolutely. I do think that's well done. It feels dark, and you get a side of Dumbledore that you would never think you'd see.
His bit is interesting with the drinking of the... I don't even know what it's called, just the potion...
Yeah.
Water.
He's made completely vulnerable.
Yeah. I'll slip it in here because I didn't know where to say it. There were some scenes in the film, and I don't want to be that guy who says, the editing was weird, but the editing was a little bit weird in this film, just in places, like lots of jump cuts and stuff. And I think I understood what effect they were going for, but they didn't need to because the actors were doing that. They were already having that effect. But in the scene in the cave and the, kill me and all that, and Harry sort of going back and forth from the... I think it would have been better if they let it play out in real time. Yeah. For us to really feel the anguish of that happening. But it was very cutty and jumpy and a bit like they were... Not that it was rushed, because it did take... quite a big chunk of time.
They were 2 hours, 10 minutes into the film by this point, so it was a little bit rushed.
But again, it's that priorities thing. They spent so much time with,
other
romances, not really a lot of time. And then at the very end of the film, again, sorry, jumping ahead, the lockets are fake. That's it. I just thought, okay, I know it's in the story, but it did just make me think, well, that was a waste of time. I kind of get why they didn't spend a lot of time on it now, because it doesn't amount to much, other than Dumbledore dying, and I think that's the only thing people really remember this film for. Is that the one where Dumbledore dies? Yeah.
Yeah, and it's the same with the book, I suppose, as well. That's the one where Dumbledore dies. Dumbledore's death, it says so much. There's something in the way he says please to Snape. You know it means please do this. It's not please don't do this.
Yeah.
What we now know about the franchise, you don't know it the first time you see it.
It's a shame really that the final books had been out, I think, just by the time this film came out, because otherwise we would have all been questioning that, because he was dying anyway, wasn't he, with his...
Yeah, exactly.
I didn't like his CGI hand. Sorry, I'm just putting that out there. I don't think I didn't look very good.
I get that. And then I think Snape's look after he does it.
Yeah.
I think there's a look of regret there. There was reluctance to do it.
Oh, yeah, of course. He has to play his part, though, doesn't he?
Yeah.
It's never his choice either. And that was the
reluctance.
Yeah.
He didn't want to do this. He didn't want to do it. And that's where you know what kind of person he really is.
And same with Draco was the same, wasn't he? He was identical. They were both good people.
Completely shaken by it.
Yeah.
He would never have done it.
No.
Like Harry and all the students, he might say, all of these things in the past about Dumbledore and the school and all that, but at the end of the day, he's like all the students sees Dumbledore as this great figure deep down.
Yeah, I think so. He was only ever echoing his dad when he said mean things about anybody.
Yeah,
really.
when he sees him fall off that tower, there's this just look of
shot.
like, oh my God.
Yeah.
And you see that in his face. He can't believe it. And he's touched by it. You can see that it does affect him.
Yeah.
I think it really does. And then obviously when they go and they're actually at the body, I think that's a great scene when they all put the wands up.
I think that's maybe one of the most emotional scenes. And it's McGonagall who does it for me.
Yeah, oh God,
There's the look on her face more than anyone else's.
It breaks me. Absolutely breaks me.
I don't know if you saw it as well, but the behind the scenes filming that scene, they were really struggling to make it really prominent or really profound.
You're not getting this. You all need to be in this, invested.
Yeah, otherwise we're wasting our time.
Moment.
I think they knew that this film didn't really have many big story moments, so that when it got to this, it had to be nailed on the head, which is what I mean by the film getting better at the end. I think the second Dumbledore's killed, it suddenly got better. That's it. That scene at the end was really good. I have to put in here, I know we've not had a massive gripe yet. This is one of the things that stuck with me now after this film. It's about Draco's mission.
Yeah.
And again, I can't remember.
Though you don't
exactly
know it
what
while
the
you're
books
watching
were.
it.
No, you don't, which I like. I like that you get a slow drip feed of information, and you always see him in scenes. He's always isolated and in the background of scenes. But it's not so much that; it's the stuff with the vanishing cabinets. He spent like a whole year fixing these cabinets to get Death Eaters into the castle for something that he was meant to be doing on his own. And then they go up to the astronomy tower, and I don't know how they knew Dumbledore would be there, but he was. And then they leave through the front door. What was the whole point in having vanishing cabinets? I get it, but what kind of plan was that? That was really like ridiculous, and that took a star off for me, off the whole film. I just thought, what a waste of time.
I've never thought about that. It's a real plot hole.
It's really stupid.
I've never thought about that before.
Like they brought Bellatrix and Fenrir Grey back, and the Carrows, and apart from Bellatrix breaking the Great Hall.
That's horrendous, though, isn't it?
Yeah, for me, it's the symbol of the Great Hall being in tatters, and then Dumbledore being dead. They go hand in hand. But other than that, and obviously confronting Snape in the grounds, I just thought that whole Draco storyline, although he did really well, again, it just felt like it amounted to nothing. I just thought, what was the point in bringing them into the castle? Were they just there to watch? It's a lot of effort.
I've never thought about that before,
to
but
do that.
yeah, I get that. I think if I'm looking at the film as a whole, I did really actually enjoy it. I really enjoyed it.
They're all enjoyable. They're all good films.
I finished the film and I thought, well, I laughed a lot more.
It's a funny film.
In that one. There were moments that really made me laugh, and I was really enjoying watching it. And then obviously the moment at the end just breaks me. Oh, I just sobbed.
And then we don't have to worry about Dumbledore being a dick anymore. I did write here, I thought that the romances and the comedy were potentially a distraction from the fact that they knew there wasn't a lot of plot happening.
Maybe.
Do you know what I mean?
No. I'm going to jump into quotes here because it really did make me laugh. There are a lot of moments in this. Yeah. I love McGonagall when she says, "Potter, take Weasley with you. He looks far too happy." Which I thought was brilliant. And then Slughorn in the Three Broomsticks. All hands on deck, Granger. That was great.
Hermione gets drunk because she's let on that she fancies Ron.
I know, butterbeer.
Is it actually got alcohol?
There's no beer in it now.
Yeah, it's really weird.
Otherwise you wouldn't be letting kids have it, would you?
It's just like a sugar rush.
Yeah. And then McGonagall again, actually, I've got another one. Why is it whenever something happens, it's always you three? Yeah, I love that. And Hermione put in, excuse me, I have to go vomit. I like that bit as well. And in the hospital wing when she says, "He's been poisoned, you daft bimbo." Just thought it was brilliant as well.
You know what's really funny is you've named all ones that I didn't write, so that's testament to how many quotes there are.
Oh well, there you go. And my last one, it's not fun. It's not a funny one, but so much really. But I just like when they're apparating out of Hogwarts, and Dumbledore's like, "Well, being me has its privileges." Yeah, which I like that line.
Good old contradiction, Dumbledore.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of moments.
Yeah, all the ones I wrote. There's quite a few.
Go ahead.
Okay, there's one. Ron's talking about Draco going to Borgin and Burke's, and he just goes, "It's a creepy shop. He's a creepy guy." I like it when they're talking about skin, and Harry says she's got nice skin. And he's like, you think Dean's dating my sister because of her skin? He's like, well, no, but I'm just saying it might be a contributing factor.
Hermione's got nice skin.
Yeah,
It's
very nice.
It's a strange, awkward conversation.
And then, oh god, there's more. I really like the good to see you, Wallenby. And then calling him Wenby later on. I think that's funny from Slughorn. But I think the one that makes me like just sort of belt out is did you and Ginny do it then?
Yeah.
Can we talk about character next, just so I can rant about Ginny, because I know I haven't.
Yes, go ahead, have your rant.
This very sudden infatuation with Ginny.
I know, it just come out of nowhere.
Completely out of nowhere. One hug at the beginning and then nearly rolling on the floor with each other. Yeah,
in the book it develops over, like he suddenly begins to notice her.
Yeah.
And it's developed, but it's just like, well, hang on, it's Cho Chang, he was with Cho Chang, what the hell?
Yeah. And she's with Dean, apparently, at some point, you know. It's like, are you not dating Dean during the summer? It's like, what? No, apparently. But yeah, and I don't want to, like, hate on Ginny.
Yes, you do. Go ahead. Go on. You want to hate on her. Go on.
Oh, my God. Awful all the way through.
Just not sure why they went in that direction with her. And I don't think it's that she's a bad actress. I just think it's the decisions they made for the character. I'm just not sure why.
A bit both. The thing is, it's one thing to have her with no charisma and therefore no chemistry with people, but it's also just the scripting for her and the way she says some lines. There's a bit on the train where Luna's giving out the Quibbler magazine, and she goes, Quibbler? And yes, please. Picks one up, barely looks down. What's a rackspurt? And it's just like, and she does it again with the potions book. She grabs it off Harry, and then within a fraction, she's going, "Who's the Half-Blood Prince?" It's like, how can you read so fast? Like, and I do think that is an actress thing. I don't think that's a director thing. As an actor, you would go, "I'm going to grab the book. I need to look at the book, read the book." You know, it's just basic actions. And I just think, I don't know. And then another line: "Why is it he's always covered in blood? When was the last time he was covered in blood?" That was, I don't get it. And then she gives him a pie and says, "Open up, you." It's like, you're rude. Go away.
That's kind of weird. I don't like that line. It's
Fuck off, Ginny. Just every time she was in a scene, I mean, the film's quite desaturated anyway in terms of colour, but she drained it. Every scene she just sucked the life out of, like a dementor.
I don't think it's just her. I wouldn't put it down to just her, because if it wasn't a decision they wanted to make, it wouldn't be in the film.
Yeah.
So I just don't understand why they went in that direction with her. That's my thing.
Yeah.
She should have been so much more and warm and
likeable.
Yeah, well, likeable. Yeah, and they just didn't really do anything with her, and I just don't like the decisions they made, to be honest. Because what is it that made him fall for her?
Yeah, what was attracted to her? Yeah.
Because she doesn't do anything.
Yeah, they made her very cold, didn't they? There was nothing about her that made her.
She's quite cold, yeah.
And then every now and again she'd walk up to him creepily and then go, "Oh, shoelace," and then start tying his shoelace. It's like, get off me, you creep. Oh, anyway, so back to characters. I didn't write many choices here.
I just realised I've left it blank.
Speaks volumes then.
Go ahead.
I wrote McGonagall because all of a sudden she's kind of quite fun. You know, she has a good arc in the films. But I think weirdly, and I'm not saying she's the best character, but I think she really did break through in this. And sometimes in a room full of very highly acclaimed actors is Lavender Brown.
Yeah, she was very good. She did a lot.
She kind of came in and just grabbed it by the reins and did what she wanted to do. Even if it is a bit silly.
Yeah, but she made an impact.
Completely owned it. So who is your favourite then?
My favourite is Hermione Granger. I love what she got to do in this one.
Yeah, her emotional maturity in this one is good.
Yeah, she really got a chance to shine in this one. And she had moments of her own rather than just, you know, being there and witnessing things, which I liked.
Yeah.
And I do love that whole Ron Hermione thing going on when she gets to sit with him in the hospital wing, and I love all that. I'm totally invested in them.
Something that they added to the book. I don't remember it being that prominent in the books, but because they knew what was going to happen and where they needed to get it to, I think they did some good things in the film with that. Yeah.
No, so it's definitely Hermione for me.
And then favourite moment. Again, I agree with you. There's lots of good moments.
Yeah.
Just randomly put in the film. That's all.
I think for me, it would either have to be the hospital wing with Ron and Hermione, because I do love that.
That's good.
Being poisoned, you daft bimbo. I just love that line. And then on the complete other end of the spectrum, I just think it's very heartfelt and personal to the rest, because there's so much dark stuff in there. It's, I think, just perfectly done.
Oh, to be young and to feel love's king's sting.
Yeah. It's a lovely scene.
I like the liquid look brewing scene, but again, edited a bit weird. Comedy's a bit too on the nose, Hermione's hair getting more frizzy and stuff. I thought it was a bit not very realistic, but I really like the Death Eater attack scene. I think as a scene it's just perfectly well done. They haven't done anything to that scale, I don't think, really before.
No.
But I'm gonna have to go with when they're on the train back home for Christmas and Lavender's doing the window, fogging up the glass, but it's not her and it's not Ron. It's Harry fiddling with the armrest while it's all going on. He's just like, I've got nowhere else to look. So he just sort of reaches out and starts just fiddling with the seat to say, what's this?
I've just remembered another moment that it might top Hospital Wing, actually. Oh, it's the moment where just after Lavender Brown and Ron get together and Hermione's practicing her birds and she's so upset. And she asks Harry, "Is that how it how it feels? I know how you feel about Ginny. I've seen how you look at her." And she's so upset. And the bit when Ron comes in and you see Harry kind of give the look, as oh, for fuck's sake, get out. And he kind of
hate Lavender in that moment as well.
Oh God, I hate Lavender, full stop. But she's getting in the way. It's supposed to be Hermione. She's in the way. Just for
I don't think she realises that she's in the way, does she?
Yeah, no, absolutely not. No. But I there's this moment, and I actually rewound it back and watched it again. He very subtly, he just moves his hand a little bit, Harry, and touches her leg.
I saw that, yeah.
Very, very subtle.
Yeah.
And then obviously afterwards she sits down and puts her head on his shoulder and he grabs hold of her hand. And that moment is just really devastatingly sad. I just think they did it very well.
And you really get a sense in this, and again, I'm not sure if I got it so much in the books, that Harry and Hermione are best friends.
Yeah.
And Ron and Harry are brothers. I get that more.
Yeah.
Different sort of dynamics there.
Yeah, the dynamics between each of them, Ron and Harry and Ron and Hermione and Harry and
they move around
Hermione
all the
time.
Ron,
all the dynamics, the way that they feel about each other are very different.
Yeah. Yeah, loads of great moments, loads of great quotes, very funny. I think the romance stuff is handled well. It's just a bit it feels a bit out of place for the overall story. I get why it's needed, I get why it's not needed. I see both. Sides. So, we're coming towards the end, but we still got to announce our top 10 characters, which was a pain in the bumhole to do.
She's only interested in you because she thinks you're the chosen one.
But I am the chosen one.
I found it very difficult because there's lots of different scenarios of this. There's lots of characters that are well acted, but you don't like the character. There's lots of ones where there's a well acted character who's in it not very much. There's so many different combinations of performance, actor, character, screen time, how many films they appear in. So sometimes, someone like Rita Skeeter, although she's technically one of my favourite cameos in the film, I couldn't possibly say she was one of my favourite characters because she's in it for 4 minutes.
Yeah, I think for me, I found it difficult because there's a few that I really like that are obvious that would the top ones. But then I find it more difficult because, there's those ones that I really like. But then how do you push some up over others?
Yeah, it was harder dropping people off the list than it was putting people on.
I'm quite surprised with my list. And I have to admit, this is a list that could probably, if I watched it another time, be different.
Yeah, it will change all the time.
Yeah.
Nobody take this for gospel. This is just...
this is how I feel right now about it.
So...
You go first.
Yeah, 10 to 6, and then we'll talk about 5 to 1, which works well for me. Mine's a definite split, I think. Okay, number 10 completely encompasses what I was just saying. I've put Dolores Umbridge as number 10, and the reason she's at number 10 is because I can't possibly say that she's my favourite.
Yeah, but she makes enough of an impact.
Yeah, but she's one of the best acted. So, and I think the film did a lot to enhance her character and the hatred we had for her. Like the music's very irritating, the costumes just sickly to look at, office is just
She's
hideous.
a greatly made character. The fact that come out of somebody's imagination, it's fantastic.
And yeah, potentially the most evil character in the series. So that's Dolores Umbridge. At number 9, almost purely based on the performance in The Goblet of Fire by Brendan Gleeson, I'm going to go with Alistair Moody, Mad Eye. I think in a film with lots of supporting characters, he just totally gave us everything we needed. Even though he was playing Barty Crouch Jr., playing Mad Eye Moody, I'm very aware that technically I've just ranked Barty Crouch Jr. as number 9, but this Mad Eye, because we don't get much else of real Mad Eye Moody, so I think the shifts between darkness and madness and comedy, and especially in that 3 unforgivable curses scene, I think is really expertly done. So he's number 9. Number 8, I've gone for Remus Lupin. Again, standout in The Prisoner of Azkaban, and a crucial piece in Harry's development from boy into man, and the way he's able to provide history for Harry and context via that window to the past and those scenes they have together. He's a great teacher and a mentor and a friend, but not afraid to be hard on Harry. I think that's important too. And he's a werewolf, which is you feel a bit sorry for him.
Yeah.
Number 7, Rubeus Hagrid. A role that was written for Robbie Coltrane, really. I can't imagine anyone else doing it.
Personifies it, doesn't he?
Pretty much, yeah. And that makes sense why his performance elevated the character so much, because he was Hagrid.
Yeah.
And, I mean, more of a book thing, I guess. I just like how he's the first person Harry really meets. He's the introduction to the world. And
he loves Harry.
Yeah. And it's great that he has someone outside of the classroom, but still on campus that he can go to. Even just to escape.
And it will be fully supported.
Somewhere, yeah. And then number 6 is Minerva McGonagall. She's just a constant throughout the franchise. She's just always there. And she does become more badass and kick-ass as the films go on. But she's the unsung guardian of Harry.
Yeah, absolutely. Perfectly put.
And I think she's kind of underrated in that respect. But Maggie Smith was McGonagall. I couldn't picture anyone else doing it. Yeah, that's 10 to 6.
That's 10 to 6. Okay, so number 10 for me, which is a surprise because I would have thought I would put him higher, but the movies have changed my mind, is Remus Lupin.
Okay.
And this is more for how he is later. Don't like how he is later in the movies.
I just ignored him
not as
a
nice
little bit,
and shouts more, and I don't really like that so much. Like his performance in number 6, not a fan. He kind of shouts at Harry, and he's stressed and
that thing. They are all very stressed, aren't they?
Yeah, I just don't like it. Not a fan. Like it more in the book. So he's number 10.
Okay.
My number 9's Neville Longbottom. Again, like you just said about McGonagall, he's a constant. He's always there, and he does get his moments to shine. And he is a really lovable character.
Proper underdog.
Yeah, absolutely. And my number 8 is Molly Weasley.
That's a good choice.
I think she has some great moments. And there was a bit in, I think it was in the documentary, where she just says, they are what you imagine a family to be, the Weasleys. Yeah. And that's what Harry wants. Yeah. And she is the personification of a mother, and she
didn't have to do that.
No, she takes it on as an extra son. Yeah. And she cares that much. And you see that from, I think, book 5.
I was going to say, in Order of the Phoenix, right at the very beginning, she's the one sort of still concerned for Harry or standing up for him. Someone says, well, he's not a child. And she says, well, he's not an adult either. And I like that bit.
And, you're not his parent. And he's like, I'm as good as.
Yes. Really enjoyed her this time around.
Yeah. Number 7 for me is Hagrid. Again, yes, I know. So, again, for all the same reasons, he just personifies a character, and I love the accent that they used. And I think he's very shortchanged later on. Yeah, I think I think 4, it started to get a bit.
And then they didn't really put him in 5.
Yeah, then from then on, very, very shortchanged. Even in the last one, when he brings Harry back, that's it. That's all you get. That is it. Yeah. So it's more based on his parts in the first ones and the end of 2 when they're all clapping him. Fantastic. My number 6 is Severus Snape. Now, again, God, you could have knocked me over with a feather if you told me a while ago that Snape would have been in my top 10. But I just think the character has such an amazing arc, and I think Alan Rickman, my God.
Yeah,
He
knocked
just
out of the park.
embodies that part.
Yeah.
I love the way he speaks the dialogue. I love the way he does it, the way he plays it. It's absolutely phenomenal. And I can't imagine it any other way now at all.
Never could see anyone else doing that.
He just is it in absolute completely. And I love the arc that you get to see those little moments. We mentioned it in a third one where he stands in front of the kids
Yeah,
when the werewolf is attacking, and there are little moments of redemption that you see. They're very subtle, but you can pick them out if you're looking.
Yeah.
And I do think it's fantastic, and obviously we can't talk about it yet, but the last one, he did, like you say, knocked out the park.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's my number 6.
Okay. Number 5. This is interesting, really. I mean, I nearly didn't put any of the main 3 cast/characters in the top 10 list. And I don't really know why. I think it's because you're just so used to them and you spend so much time with them that you just forget that they're characters. I don't know.
You're going to be surprised at my list then.
Are they all in there?
No.
Oh, okay. None of them. Okay, so what I've done is I've been fair to them, and I put my 5, 4, and 3 together. So I put at number 5, and this is very interesting. I put Ron. Everyone loves Ron, and I think if you say that you don't, you're probably lying. And again, he's the comic relief, the constant comic relief in the films, and a sidekick to Harry. And who doesn't love a sidekick? I think the reason he's not higher on my list is because what you see is really just what you get. He's kind of just as is on the tin. There's not necessarily a lot of deeper complexities really that were explored in the film.
Yeah.
And the times that you do get that, I think it's often to his detriment and not really adding to his character.
He is quite a shallow character, like just for instance, like when lots of like stressful things happen and he's just eating, you know. He's not like got lots going on under the surface, not really.
No, he lost a lot of points for Goblet of Fire. I really hate him in Goblet of Fire. Just everything about him, I don't think he's got any redeeming quality. Really,
well, he
going
just
on
come
there.
back to him eventually.
Yeah, and then he has another wobble in Deathly Hallows Part 1, so he's not really in that one very much. And
That's not his fault though. That's the necklace.
Well, yeah, and he's not really involved in the time turner stuff in number 3. You know, he missed out on quite a lot of stuff, so he ended up going a little bit further down. But yeah, like I said earlier, he's like a brother to Harry, which is why I think they have more fights, whereas Hermione's more of a friend and they stay together. Number 4, I've put Harry, and again, really weird. I would never put these 3 in a top 10 list, but I think I kind of, without them, there's no story. And this is Harry's story, so although I wouldn't say he's a standout favourite, I think the amount you care about the character probably goes unrecognised because he's always there. And when you do see him from orphaned baby to man who walks to his own death to save his world, I think that's a really, really, really interesting character arc over a long period of time.
I feel a bit bad now. Harry didn't make my list. Harry Potter films and he didn't make my list.
I think because of the acting early on.
Yeah, no, I don't like the acting.
There's a lot of changes, and I mentioned before we started recording the angry, open mouth, loud breathing that he does sometimes. I don't think they're the best actors in the world. That'd be a lie. I think number 5 was the peak for Daniel Radcliffe, and I think 7 and 8 are probably equally good in different ways. Yeah, I've done a you here. You've got to have him because his name's in the title.
And I haven't.
Yeah. Number 3, again, I shocked myself here. I've put Hermione Granger as number 3. Although I think she's probably the easiest of the characters to act, I think Emma Watson really understood the brief and she did the research and she put the work in. Is the most consistent.
I think she very much is her in a way.
Pretty much, yeah. In terms of quality and performance and development, the other two kind of had little wobbles. I think Hermione and Emma Watson kind of
always
just got it all the way through.
Is.
Although she can be annoying, you know, although sometimes she's the deus ex machina because she just knows stuff. And she can be a bit sort of pissy or snappy or bossy.
Preachy.
Preachy sometimes, yeah. I've realised she's the best friend and the constant. I think in Goblet of Fire especially, she stood out as being the one that stood by Harry all the way.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And I think she's got more moments that are surprising, where she punches Draco, when she comes down the stairs for the Yule Ball, where she breaks the rules for Dumbledore's army, where she erases her parents' memory. I think she's got such a meaty role. in the film. So yeah, sorry, I've gone to 3, so feel free to come and meet me.
Yeah, okay, so my number 5 is Sirius Black. And it has an awful lot to do with Gary Oldman, because he just, a bit like the way Dan Radcliffe feels about him, you kind of really are in awe of him as a character, and he is going to be there no matter what. And the fact that he then dies is a huge moment, and it's that got spoiled for me. I hadn't finished the book, and by the time I heard about that,
Sirius dies.
It was horrendous. But he's such a father figure. He just takes on the role without thought. Yeah. He's always there for Harry. Yeah, completely unconditionally, and I love seeing that. He plays that really well.
Yeah.
My number 4 is Minerva McGonagall, because again, like you said, you really put it there. She is the guardian.
Yeah.
She has his best interests at heart always. And like you say, she does have moments. She's very funny. She's got a fine line for being quite strict, but she does see that you get a lot of moments where you'll see her kind of almost, again, like a mask slip. She's this very strict disciplinarian, but then you'll see her have these moments where she cares, where like in the third one where he can't go to the to Hogsmeade, and she just turns around and pats his shoulder, and I love her steadfastness. So yeah, had to be there. She is Hogwarts. Yeah. So in the last one, when it comes to protecting it, she's right there at the front. I love that. And my number 3 is, surprisingly, because I wouldn't have thought it, but she's really stood out to me this time. And that's Luna Lovegood. Okay. I just love the innocence of her. She is who she is, regardless of how anybody thinks about her, what they say, what they do to her. She's just not bothered. That is who she is. And she is a firm friend as well, I think. It doesn't come across, you don't get to see it much, but she's there. She's always there.
Because she's quite quiet. Question. It's not always necessarily the loudest person in the room who's the best.
And she doesn't
friend.
say it, but she's there.
Yeah.
She's right there.
She was
in
there
the
for
fight.
Harry when nobody else was as well. And she didn't want praise for it. She didn't want recognition for doing that. She just saw it as it was, And
I love the way Evanna Lynch plays her, the voice, and it's just she's such an oddity. But there's something about someone who is odd, but owns it.
Thanks.
And and I really like that, because it's always seen as a detriment to someone, but it's not with Luna.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
And I like that.
Yeah. She's not on my list, but I do see your points. Number 2 for me is Sirius Black. I feel like because we don't necessarily get to see Gary Oldman play a lot of good guys, he's very good at playing baddies. But when he does, he's phenomenal. And I think Sirius Black is a role that lets us see both sides in one, and a very quick transformation between escaped mass murderer to being the person who cares most about Harry in the world. Yeah. And I think, it just played to Gary Oldman's strengths, really. I think he becomes that outside support more so than Hagrid does, and more so than Dumbledore does for a time in the series. Yeah, and you get the feeling that he genuinely cares, because Harry's an extension of his relationship with James. So and exactly what you said, Gary Oldman playing that part just adds so much to it and to those intimate scenes. He's a fantastic actor. It all
comes back down to the casting. It's just superbly done.
They picked the right legend here for this person. Couldn't imagine someone else doing it now, even though he's not got that much time in the on screen in the films. I think really what he did have, he grabbed it. So Sirius for me. Number 2.
My number 2 is Albus Dumbledore. I know you don't like Dumbledore, but I love the character, and it comes back to not just the films but the books as well. He is that character. He's wise and he's calm, and he's always there, and he's that person.
Is he?
He's that person for Harry that is. He's a protection, even though, like we said before, and I truly stand by it, I think Harry is his flaw. It's because he cares so much that he makes the mistakes he makes. because he wants to do the best for him and isn't always able to do that. And that in itself is lovely, that he has that feeling for Harry, and Harry doesn't always know it. And it's not until the end that you realise how much he cares, when he looks back and he looks at the pensieve and he finds out about Snape and things, that he's known all of this time what's had to be done, and it's killed him to do it.
Yeah.
And I just love the way that the character is. I pretty much everything about him. I think it's a greatly written character.
I just can't see past those flaws. It's hard for me to see that he cares for Harry when his actions almost speak the opposite, even if he tries to justify it later. You know, other characters wouldn't have done the things he did, like in number 5, just completely ignoring him for a year.
I feel like I should make sure I'm always good to you, Matt, because I feel like you would be very unforgiving.
Not tie my shoelaces.
If I didn't do anything and try to explain it later, you wouldn't forgive me.
You know, you'll have your face on a dartboard. So what's interesting is all the reasons you just said you like Dumbledore, I'm now going to use for Snape, and I actually didn't write them down. So number 1 is Severus Snape, because the revelation that you get from him and all the reasons that you realise later on that he cares, and that justifies how he's acted or not acted up until this point, make a lot more sense to me than Dumbledore randomly being a dick. So the fact that Snape, the whole character in general, was the big reveal. It was the big secret.
Oh, yeah.
And the big twist. I think that's probably the right word.
He's the most complex character as well, because at the end of the day, he does hate Harry because he hated James, but he also can't not have feelings for him because of the way he felt about Lily. That is such a complex thing, that he wants to hate him, and he does in a way, but in another way he doesn't, and he can't. It
definitely adds a much more interesting conflict. And I think similar to Sirius, in terms of seeing a character that's bad but good under the surface, or vice versa, whichever way around. Snape is great because all the way through he pretty much was just an archetype of villainous, until you get to that moment in Order of the Phoenix where you get a glimpse that and it's amazing how after 5 films your opinion can change, and then what you think you've known about him all along is wrong. And the way it plays out in the books and in the films, I think, is perfect. It's the one that only backstory bits they didn't mess up. And Alan Rickman on top of that, it sounds bad saying he didn't have a lot to do, but because the character was so archetypal for most of it, but there was so much going on under the surface that we know he knew from J.K. Rowling at the beginning. So that ending and that emotional change, he didn't suddenly just start playing a really nice character at the end. He was still Snape, but with just a billion more layers that were always there that we just never saw. And I think, the writing of that character was great. Phenomenal twist.
Yeah, I can totally see that. Number 1 for me is Hermione Granger.
Rita Skeeter. So thanks for listening.
So for me, I think the reason Hermione is number 1 for me is it comes from growing up reading the books, because I related so much to Hermione's character. She's a girl who is, I'm not saying I'm very intelligent, because I'm not, but she's a girl who likes to voice her opinion because she believes she has one.
Right.
And she loves books, and that was me. And I can't help but voice my opinion, unfortunately. And she is a great friend, and like you said, she is the best friend. She's the support all the way through. And I just related so much to her as a character. She was an embodiment of kind of what I would imagine part of me would be. And
that's the best thing, isn't it, when you can identify with a character?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I think that's the most powerful thing you can
and that's why she'll always be number 1 on my list, because there's parts of her that I see in me. So
she completes me.
So I've always felt very close to that character.
I wouldn't say I identified with any of them. I can't think of anybody now.
I don't think, in terms of the way she's portrayed in the film, I don't always like her, the way she's portrayed. But I think as it goes on, she gets better.
For every character, though, can't you? There's always parts of every character that you don't like. Even Hagrid, there's times where you think, God, Hagrid, be better. But that's what makes everyone so real, is that nobody's fully good or fully
and,
bad or
and
perfect.
Hermione is a real character in a way that some of the others aren't, because she's Muggle born. She's got that link to our world. She understands what like she knows what dentists are.
Yeah.
And, all these things. She has that link to us.
Yeah,
Yeah, no,
I think she's a very good
love
character.
her character.
Yeah, and it sounds like J.K. Rowling really liked her, and Steve Kloves really enjoyed writing her for the film. So yeah, she's very high up in mine as well. Mm-hmm. There you go. I think those are two very good lists. Similar but different.
Yeah.
Merlin's beard. She's perfect.
And that's it.
That's
that is
that.
episode 3. So the last episode is the last 2 films, part 1 and part 2 of the Deathly Hallows.
I'm going to try and watch them back to back together, because I think I have struggled with part 2 before because it starts midway through something else. So I think I'm going to do it straight through, which I've never done before.
Wow, now that'll be interesting.
And to finish, we'll be looking at the legacy of Harry Potter overall. What's happened in terms of merchandise and spin-offs and extra books,
what Harry
and
Potter is
stage
now.
plays, and the universality of Harry Potter and what an institution it's become. And to finish is the ultimate Harry Potter series quiz. Now we've been watching the films and making questions as we go. Mine are very hard questions.
Great.
It's got to be quick fire. No time to think. If you don't know it, you don't know it. It's tough titties. So,
Oh, God help me.
yeah. So if you really like to quiz, defo tune into part 4.
I think it's going to be exciting, this next one, because the stakes are so high.
Yeah. We'll also announce our final rankings of the films as well, because I know we've done a lot of chopping and changing.
Mine's going to be a very different list than the last time I ranked them.
Well, Deathly Hallows Part 1 was always my favourite, so I'm very interested to see if it stays that way now, because otherwise I've just been lying to people for years.
We'll see.
So,
where can they find us?
there we go. You can find us on our website, which is cinechat.co.uk/podcast, or across social media, search for Cinechat Podcast, especially on Twitter, very active there nowadays, and Instagram. Or you can email us at, forgot.
podcast@cinechat.co.uk.
Indeed you can. Still waiting.
So, that is it. That's number 3.
We'll be back in about 2 weeks. And
we will.
We'll bring this bad boy to an end.
So, it's bye from me.
And it's bye from me.